Hey, Marc Millan here. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. And today I want to talk about servant leadership. Servant leadership. So maybe you have a position on your team, maybe you work at some place, maybe you work with people. And servant leadership, I think, is it brings about the most fruit and benefit when you're in a position where you get to influence people in teams or in management. So there's a standardized version of leadership that I think most of the corporate world is used to, but I think servant leadership is really the key to making things great and really getting everything you can out of the vision and the people you get to do life with. In another video that I did, which I'll put the link on here, I talk about what is leadership. So the definition I like to use is leadership is about advancing the mission while developing people and making those around you better. I think it involves those three things. You have to advance the mission, meaning like if I get a position of leadership today, a year from today, you should see some sort of progress. If there hasn't been progress, then I'm really not leading. I'm just managing situations and keeping them just as they are. So there has to be progress. And then the development of people is really huge. I think leadership is really about developing people, helping people grow in their gift or who they are. I think that's a part of being a great leader. Anybody who we look in history that was a great leader had impact on other people towards even growth in who they were. And then the last part, which is making those around you better, I think is an inspiring part of leadership that we all can recognize and see, which is why we regard people as leaders in a certain area, because they influence us to kind of be better. So I think that's the foundation of what leadership is, and that's the definition I've come to that feels right to me. Now, servant leadership, if you're trying to kind of get your mind around this, can a leader be a servant? Yes, absolutely. And I think every leader should and must be a servant first, especially if you're a believer, because this was Jesus's example. Jesus came and said, I did not come to be served, but that I would serve and be a ransom to many. And then Paul talks about the mantle of serving and serving others and regarding others as greater than yourself. So there's this aspect of humility and not using my title to appear or be superior to you, but using my title to understand that I'm responsible for something and that the person or you are part of that and that you make a difference. What makes teams great, what makes organizations great is people. And so the standardized version of leadership is more concerned about the results. It's more concerned about the action than the person. And so corporate leadership may look like, hey, this is what we're doing and we're gonna do it within 2 months. And that's the end of the conversation. There's no more interpersonal connection as to how this impacts a person, what has to happen between those things. I coined that as top-down leadership. I say how it goes, and everybody down here has to do what I say. And to me, that's kind of old school corporate leadership, which is just very commanding, very demanding, and it's not interpersonal, and it's not caring at all. Servant leadership flips the hierarchy. So instead of it being top down, it's more from the bottom up. The leader is leading everyone towards a higher goal, but they are the ones supporting and moving it, as opposed to top down leadership, which says, I'm up here, you gotta climb up here, and if you don't do it, I'm gonna find someone else to do it. Servant leadership says, I'm going to lead us towards that direction. Another great image you might see online is the leader who's kind of in front of the team with the rope in their hand and is just kind of tugging everybody towards the goal, as opposed to the leader who's behind everyone and telling everybody where to go. Servant leadership is the one that says, I'm going to be the example and I'm going to go first and I want you to come with me. Here's why. So servant leadership is about caring. Now, the term came out in around 1970. A gentleman by the name of Robert Greenleaf coined the term. He actually kind of said a servant is a leader, or the servant as a leader. And then, so the servant was really the primary goal. The servant as a leader. So having this heart of a servant, having this mind of a servant. And what is a servant? A servant is not someone you just take advantage of, someone that can walk all over you. No, a servant is someone who just says, how can I help you? What can I do to help you do better? How can I serve you today? It just places the needs of someone in front of them, as opposed to them just seeking their own needs. So as a leader, this can be very, very tricky, because we have the responsibility of moving things and getting things to another place. And what can happen very easily, because of the position, my other video on leadership, remember I say that leadership is not a position. Leadership is an action. It's demonstrated in doing certain things. But what can happen is, because you have a title, you can remove yourself from doing the little things that have to get done to accomplish the vision. But as a servant, you never remove yourself of what needs to be done. And so starting off as a servant, the servant as a leader, that term by Greenleaf then became servant leadership. So it's leadership with the mindset of a servant. It's leadership with the heart of a servant, keeping serving in front of leading and tethering them together. So every time I'm leading, or I have to give instruction on where things are headed or things are going, I'm taking that position of a servant and saying, how can I care for you? Simon Sinek, who's like a modern day philosopher, has a great phrase, and I'm paraphrasing him, but he says, leadership is not about being in charge. Leadership is about caring for those in your charge. And of course, Simon has a lot of teachings about servant leadership. He has a great book called Why Leaders Eat Last. So when he's talking about leadership, he's often talking about it with the tone and the perspective of servant leadership. He might just be talking on leadership, but he's talking about the process of leading as a servant. And that's what I'm here to just kind of unpack for us. Servant leadership is about caring for your team. It's about helping them understand. Here's some practical ways. Whenever you give vision, make sure you give vision clearly, but help them understand the job of a leader is to give vision clearly. Usually when people can't get behind an idea, it's mostly because they don't understand what it is, they don't understand why we're doing it, or they don't understand enough. Some people just need a little bit more information. Now, some people might choose not to follow, but still a servant leader is caring in the process. They always care for the individual. They always care for the person. It's the servant first as they're leading a team. And they're still leading. They're still giving vision. They're still moving things, like I said, advancing the mission while developing people, making those around you better. Servant leader is always stopping to ask, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? What can I do to get better? Is there anything that I'm doing that's making your job harder? Is this reasonable? There's a great question to ask as a servant leader when you need something done. Sometimes we can think that I need this by tomorrow, but the person might have 20 things already scheduled. So those are little ways that you can practice servant leadership. I believe in servant leadership. I try to practice it as much as I can, and I try to teach it to my leader teams and the leaders that I have in other areas, so that they too are demonstrating leadership with a servant's heart. So that's what servant leadership is. I hope it helped you. And until next time, from my heart to yours.